or starting things off is Michael DePalma, VP of Channel Development at Datto and Kaseya. He joined the business development team in February of 2016. His role includes representing the company at trade shows and conferences across North America. So many of you know him. He did a lot of MDF events and things like that. But he loves educating managed service providers on the value of business continuity solutions. And that is what he's going to talk about here today. So, Michael, stage is yours, my friend.
All right. Sounds good. Everybody sees my screen. I didn't get the memo about the holiday sweaters, but next year I will do that. So thanks, Matt. Yeah. So I'm Mike DePalma. I'm Vice President of Business Development now for Kaseya. As Matt mentioned, I've been with Datto about 9 years through the acquisition. I'm now under the Kaseya umbrella. And, it was interesting when I started 9 years ago, I started on the sales team. So I covered Southern California. And at the time, we had just made an acquisition, Backupify. So backup for O365. And that was the main focus for the whole company at the time. And, so we had a lot of conversations with MSPs at the time. Now we're talking about 2015. And the biggest hurdle wasn't about the technology. It was mostly that I was hearing from partners, I can't sell this. How do I go back into one of my clients and say, hey, we now need to start backing this up? It was an interesting hurdle. So when I joined the biz dev team in 2016, we kind of took this on the road and we started going out in MDF events and starting to talk about the shared responsibility model. And now you fast forward to 2023, just about every single MSP I talk to is backing up their O365, whether it's through one of our products or one of the competitors. It now has become kind of the standard. And what we're seeing now is this shift across the board to the cloud. Now, obviously, I lived and breathed on-premise data for years and years. And every time I'd be at a booth, I'd get MSPs coming up saying, this is a dying industry. You've got to start shifting to Azure, to AWS, and those type of things. Now, as an aside, that the on-premise data is still growing on a year-over-year basis. But clearly, as we see, even with our most recent State of the Channel report, and everybody wants that, you can get it either on our website or shoot me an email. I can get it to you. But about 50% of MSPs we talk to, and this is about a survey of about 1,500 MSPs globally, said that up to 99% of their clients will be up in the cloud in the next 3 years. So clearly, this is the shift, right? We're seeing this across the board, whatever decision you're making. But I think the conversation now really needs to be that shared responsibility model that we've been talking about for years on the Microsoft 365 piece applies to Azure as well. And when we first released this a couple of years back, I honestly, based on the feedback I was getting at the booth for years, this thing was going to fly off the shelves. This is what the channel had been asking for. And to be completely transparent, it has been a slow growth, much slower than we had projected. And so we did some analytics to figure out what is going on. Is it because the technology isn't working properly? Is it because of the cost? So we go through Salesforce and we look at what the reason for a close lost is. And the vast majority, close to 90% of MSPs told us it wasn't a good fit for their clients, which makes me think that we're mirroring exactly where we were back in 2015. Because when you look at what the SLA says, it's very interesting. When you go in and look at the SLA for Azure, if you've got the standard package, they're guaranteeing 95% uptime. Looks good before any sort of service credits. That 5% downtime could be 37 hours of downtime per month. Put this statistic in front of your clients and say, this is the reason. Just as for years and years, we've had to back up this server and we followed the 3-2-1 model of that backup. This data, even though it lives in Azure, needs to be looked at in the same way. You don't want that single point of failure, same as you would with that common, Windows-based on-premise server, right? You want to have that 3-2-1 model, 3 different copies of your data, 2 different formats, and at least one of them being off-site. And so you look at the challenges of what this looks like in terms of, what Azure offers natively or what some of the third-party, offerings might be. Obviously you want to protect your clients, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you guys are business owners. And for years and years, you're making revenue off of that on-premise data, both backing it up, protecting it. We saw the same exact thing when that shift went from Exchange servers up to Microsoft 365, razor thin margins, right? So what do you do to replace that as a business owner? Well, obviously you should be protecting this data. You should be backing up this data. And now you could actually shift the spend to say, we still need to back up that data. And the way it works is very simple. If you're familiar with the Datto Cirrus platform, it looks and mirrors it pretty much exactly in terms of how you're going to manage this device. The data lives in our tenant, within Azure, and then subsequently get sent off to those data centers, right? Military grade encryption. If you're not familiar with our data centers, we protect over an exabyte of data. So it really is going to have the same functionality as what we're seeing with an on-premise server, right? So in terms of your techs understanding it, if they've already been managing that, or they have in a previous life, and they will understand how to do that. And so the next hurdle is cost, right? People talk about cost. And what we've done is made a flat fee. So there's no egress fees, right? This is going to be your cost. So now you know what kind of margin you're building into it without having to go back to your client with extra add-ons every here and there, right? This was actually one of the bigger holdups that we had. It wasn't that the technology wasn't ready 3-4 years ago. It was trying to figure out how we were going to price this. And then the other options, if you were to try to do it just through Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery, when you start adding up all the different add-ons that you need to have to make this an apples to apples comparison, it's actually less expensive than the native Azure BCDR solution that's out there. So again, just as you want to build everything else into your managed services package, that's how we tried to price this, right? Flat fee, no egress fees, all of these things. You're still going to get the same functionality in terms of screenshot verification, all the reporting that you need, the backup reporting, failures, successful backups, all of those different types of things to be able to provide to your clients the same type of service that you have with that on-premise data. So those are the three real main talking points to this. You want to be able to protect that data, treat it as if it's on-premise data. You want to make sure that there's margin opportunity there. And then obviously you're going to have the support behind Datto throughout the whole process, from the sales, the marketing team, the tech support team, and all of those go-to-market messages. You want MDF money, that's where my team would come in. If you want to do a lunch and learn, we've done a few of those this year with this being the specific topic. Going in there and saying, okay, you have this data, it needs to be looked at in the same way. We talk about the shared responsibility model. We show that SLA so that the clients really understand why it is that this data needs to be backed up. So please reach out. We've got some testimonials. Siva's a great partner of ours that was able to do that and really accelerate their growth in that stage. There's a million other partners that have been doing that as well. But we have that breakout session. If you do want to request a demo, there's the QR code there. I think I stayed under my 7 minutes, Matt. So I will turn it back over to you.
Yeah, 20 seconds to spare. Thanks, Mike. Have a great holiday.
All right.